And welcome to this is actually called Problem Solvers. This is a new it's a better form of a webinar because it's not a webinar. It's really a prove it session that's being live streamed, but the Q&A is all the way throughout. And our guest today is MaintainX. You guys may know that we've got Nick Haas, who's the co-founder, and then we've got Alex Marotta. Is it Murata or Marotta? Murata, who is one of the solution consultants for MaintainX. You guys may have known that at Prove It earlier this year, we only had one CMMS platform at Prove It. And a lot of people asked us, hey, why did you only have MaintainX there? And the answer was, well, of all the CMMS platforms who wanted to be at the show, all the companies who make CMMS platforms, MaintainX was the only one who qualified. They're the only ones who met the minimum technical requirements to even be able to be at Prove It. That is, to be able to connect to our infrastructure, produce, and consume as an IIoT platform. And one of the things I just want to point out real quick before I get to the questions here and we get into the demo and the Q&A is MaintainX is, I'm very high on the platform. And the reason I'm high on the platform is MaintainX reminds me very much of Ignition at the beginning of Ignition's days. One of the things that always frustrated me about Ignition was Ignition would market itself as supervisory control and data acquisition, as SCADA. But it was really in a rapid application development environment, an IoT platform. MaintainX markets itself as CMMS, but CMMS is really only its entry into the market. It's actually an IIoT platform. And so there's a huge parallel between the go-to-market strategies between inductive automation 20 years ago and the go-to-market strategy for MaintainX today. So with that, we've got Nick, we've got Alex here. Why don't you guys quickly introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into, I got a couple of questions I have for you guys on like where the company came from and the platform came from, and then we'll get into the demo. Did we lose Nick? We've got Alex though. Alex, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Looks like Nick's maybe frozen there. So yeah,
Yes.
nice to meet everyone. My name's Alex Marotta. I'm a solution consultant here at MaintainX, also leading a lot of our machine connectivity, if you can call it that. So anything that kind of comes around operational data and how we can get that into the MaintainX platform and start to use it to drive different insights and work execution.
What is a solution consultant? Like to an end user or an integrator, the solution consultant is how do you help them?
Yeah, so early in your days when you're evaluating MaintainX, I'm the more technical side of the team that you'd be dealing with, kind of addressing different solutions, seeing how MaintainX can fit for you, kind of problem solving throughout that. So think of it as the technical side to pre-sales, though we definitely do a lot more than that as well.
What's your background? I know none of this was in the Q&A. None of this was in the agenda, but what's your background? Like where do you come from?
Mechanical engineer by study, studied in McGill University in Montreal. And then I worked for about a decade in different systems integrators. So I started off working with OSI Pi. Before coming to MaintainX, I worked at a company called Aspen Tech. So a lot of work there around industrial data, data historians, and whatnot. So kind of made the jump over to maintenance, but here's the kind of connectivity lead on the MaintainX side.
All right, let me ask you this question then. Here's another. I just did a consulting thing with this company called Fuse a few weeks ago, and there was a guy who had joined their solutions group, and he was formerly from an Ignition integrator. Okay. And I said, "Oh, you're the guy I want to talk to, right?" And so I asked him. I said, "Developer to developer, when you joined this company, and the first time you got to see the technology behind the hood, what was the one thing about the technology that you said?" Oh, this piece right here is the thing that interests me the most. So for you, when you go to MaintainX from an integrator, primarily, 10 years in integration, and you're a mechanical engineer, when you were working with MaintainX for the first time, what was the thing where you're like internally, you're like, yeah, this is the part of MaintainX that I think is the differentiator. It's the thing that's been missing. It's the thing that's most interesting.
Yeah, so they kind of two sides to it. One, just how simple and user-friendly the front end of MaintainX is. So when you first use MaintainX, there's not much of a learning curve. So as part of my interview, we had to give a demo of MaintainX back to a bunch of other solution consultants. Had a week to prep for that. It's totally doable. It's a very easy to use, easy to get going application. But what I didn't realize in that interview is all the power that's hidden behind the hood. So you can start very basic. You create a work order, you create a procedure, you create your PMs, super easy to get going. But then the amount that you can start to layer on behind the scenes to build that out, the different reports that we can generate, the systems you can connect into, all the different integrations that our customers have built into MaintainX. I didn't realize the power of that early on. So that was really cool to see.
That's a good answer, man. The nerds care about that answer right there. The nerds are the when you're having a beer at the bar at a conference or something, that's the answer you're looking for. And like in these types of environments, we never ask those questions, never come up. So anyway, that's a great answer. Nick. All right. So Nick, you and I go back a couple years now, right? The first time we met was in our offices, our old offices here in Dallas. Real quick, go ahead and introduce yourself. You're co-founder of MaintainX, who you are, kind of what's your background, and then the follow-up is going to be, why did you guys start MaintainX?
100%. So my name is Nick Haas. I'm one of the co-founders at MaintainX here. Prior to building MaintainX, I had a background in building, was doing digital transformation projects with Fortune 500 companies through and some consulting work, and got my first sort of hands-on experience working with, some of the challenges that the enterprise manufacturers were facing today. And that was sort of what gave us part of the impetus to building MaintainX, was just oh shit, why is everyone still like so analog? And this is not good. So that kind of helped inform that. And prior to that, I was building consumer software. And so part of, consumer software is one of the hardest, most grueling places to cut your teeth. And my other co-founders were in the same space because everything has to be free. Everything has to be perfect.
It's got the highest failure
It's got to be perfect. It's got to be free. It's got to be easy to use. And because your attention span is really small. And so, those learnings and those exercises of building consumer software carried into this, what we're doing at MaintainX, and are frankly, I think, are one of the leading reasons that we're able to be so differentiated today and growing as fast as we are. So,
Why did you? So you decide you're going to start a software company. Why did you pick CMMS? I mean, first off, this is my own personal question, because it's not the place I would start. I would really probably start. I probably would start in the manufacturing execution, like efficiency calculation stuff, which you guys do. But why CMMS? What was the gap in the market you identified? You're like, hey, that's what we should build a CMMS.
Yeah. So like part of seeing how analog, the way folks were still running things, it was like, there's got to be someone building software with this. I mean, coming from Silicon Valley, where you don't see a sheet of paper in Google's offices, Palantir's office, everything's streamlined to the hilt.
Right.
Then you go into like a Fortune 10 manufacturing environment, and it's just like, what on earth? Step back in time. So we started to look into the market, and there were 300 plus CMMSs on the market. So it was not an obvious place to say, why do we need 301? And I was, we ended up doing a lot of research.
I know an obvious answer to that,
it was still, part of it, what we sort of uncovered is that none of these platforms were designed for the guy who's got to turn a wrench in the field. It's all desktop based. And then the companies that did do some mobile work, it's a different skill set, different muscle, by the way, to build mobile, but it's all, it was basically like an airplane cockpit of buttons that they just crammed that desktop experience into a mobile device. And, these guys are, if they got bad eyesight, fat fingers, it's impossible to navigate these things. And not to mention that the software performance was just not there. It was like lagging, really slow. And so it's like, of course, these guys aren't using these systems. They're impossible to use. And so that kind of was an initial eye-opening moment. And we saw problems across the manufacturing frontline. It wasn't just maintenance, but, there was already this graveyard of companies that were trying to do connected worker. That whole thing sort of fizzled out. And even then,
it's because they always failed because they never started with the worker.
Start with the worker. And even then, it's really hard. Like, who owns that budget? Who owns that project? You can pass that ball across the org chart back and forth to where you never get any momentum. So people were already used to buying CMMS. That was already a category folks were familiar with. We thought we could do it a lot better and a lot simpler. And then with the idea always being that we would be more like a CMMS plus. We were ultimately moving closer and closer to like work execution in general. But if you,
Right.
you know, the foundations that you get with CMMS, I think it's one of the best places to start because you have all of the asset data, and the asset information and asset data is what can inform and, you know, really ramp up your ability to become a lot more data driven. And now in this new AI world, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to.
Yeah, you guys are positioned.
Yeah.
You know, you guys like HighByte and others, Litmus. You guys are positioned uniquely for the generative AI space because of the architecture of your platform. Let me ask you 3 quick hit questions. Well, I want to make a comment first. So you mentioned Palantir. I get a lot of questions about Palantir Foundry. Walker, why don't you talk about them? Blah blah blah. There is a question for you that comes out of this. It's because Palantir is closed. Foundry is they market that they're open, but they're actually not open. They're closed. The internal architecture, the way they organize data, the semantic hierarchy is designed to live within Foundry. It's not meant to be one part of a much larger whole. And that is a minimum technical requirement for my architectures, which is why I'm not a fan of Palantir Foundry. The tech is impressive, but I don't use it for that very reason, because I know that that's diminishing return, that architecture. To that end, you guys went open, right? So you guys are an open architecture. You're designed to be one part of a much larger whole. You're designed to live and coexist within an ecosystem. Why did you make that strategic choice? When you had, obviously you were sitting down, you have investors, you've got partners, you guys have to make a decision to go open or closed, be the monolith or be one part of a larger whole. Why did you choose being one part of a larger whole?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, it's very hard to build a platform for everyone and everything. There's a lot of legacy companies right now out there, without naming any names, that try to do that. And I think it's very easy to argue that none of them do it very well. Maybe they do one piece of it well, or what they, you know, but the rest of it is all just slapstick together, and it totally, you know, presses their NPS scores. Everyone hates them, and it's got all the stuff that creates so much bottlenecks throughout their organization that they're really not delivering as much value as they think they are or could be. So our goal was like, let's be the very best work execution platform for the frontline worker. Like really lay into working with that frontline guy who doesn't need any training, very limited to no onboarding, can just show up and intuitively use the product. And then from there, we can just be completely interoperable to connect with anything in their technology stack. I mean, there's the digital maturity level of this entire ecosystem is all over the place. And there's no playbook on what stack to use, what tools to use, how to build it up. So our goal was to say, rather than just say we can only connect to these things, or we're going to be closed with partnerships here, it was like, we'll connect to anything, whatever you think is interesting to get out of MaintainX or put into MaintainX. Let's allow that data to flow, and then keep listening to our customers and figure out what do they want to do next, and how do we help them sort of unlock their potential.
2 more quick questions before you guys get into your presentation. Number 1, who do you consider your biggest competitors?
You know, I mean, there's still, like, as far as who we actively compete in deals with every day, there's the usual suspects of other sort of more modern CMMS platforms out there, whether that's a company like a Limbo or an Upkeep, or, you know, even companies like eMaint to still stick around and fix, but Maximos of the world. But as far as, like,
I mean, I know your opinion is that there really is no competitor to MaintainX. Obviously, you know, I know that's
the reality is
opinion.
There's not anyone that's really thinking about it the way we are, and
right.
The amount of, like, upfront legwork we've had to do to build that foundation is not something that they can just wake up tomorrow and add this into their systems easily. This is a whole, you know, this is a deep consideration of the architecture and the foundation and the product strategy that we've had from day one. So, you know, the pivot of those companies, you know, those other competitors or anyone else coming after us from that perspective isn't as you know, daunting as maybe it would be for other markets or other competitors. I think the biggest competitor is probably one that hasn't been started yet. Someone who kind of follows in our footsteps and sees sort of that vision that we do, and maybe tries to run us down. And so that's where we got to make sure we keep putting one foot in front of the other every day, and not let up at all.
I can give my take quickly
And here,
on that.
so, and I'll answer the. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Alex,
I think what I see a lot is just the willingness to change on that. So, when we talk to different customers, they've got some system in place where their orders, however that may be, and often don't see kind of the need to change from that. It's working. The guys get the work done. We may not have all the visibility into what they're doing, but it's working. So I'd say, though it's not a direct competitor, that's something I come up across a lot.
Oh yeah, we lose more deals to
there's
status quo than any other competitor. Oh yeah.
Well, here's my technical answer. So if somebody's asked, why do I care about MaintainX? Like, Walker, why you even waste, why are you, here's why I care. As an architect, as someone who designs digital transformation journeys, consults on the strategy, designs the architecture, and has overseen engineers and done the work myself, digitally transforming orgs, there are technical problems you run into when you're trying to solve a customer's problem. Like, for example, you ask the question, why does preventative maintenance exist? And why does break fix exist? Well, break fix exists. If we're going to talk about the CMMS part, break fix exists because shit breaks. I mean, nothing is designed to run forever. It's not, people make mistakes, things wear out. Okay. So you have to have a mechanism when things break at the most inopportune time, which is they always break at the most inopportune time. What you want to do is you want to be notified of that break as quickly as possible, diagnose it as quickly as possible, secure the parts that you need, get the fix done, and get back running as quickly as possible and safely as possible, right? That is the business problem for break fix. The business problem for preventative maintenance is that, and this is to your point, Nick, you talked about oftentimes the people who are paying for CMMS are not the people who are using CMMS, right? There's a decoupled who controls the budget versus who's supposed to get the value out of it. When it comes to PMs, every single person here who works in manufacturing knows that 99% of all PMs that you go out to work on, you fucking pencil whip. 99% of PMs are not done. Okay? Want to know why? Because the mechanic, the electrician, the technician who knows that piece of equipment better than the maintenance planner says, I don't need to grease it again. The grease is sitting there and it's all spilling out of the bearing right now. It doesn't need grease this week. And what happens there? I don't do the PM. They think the PM got done. I pencil whipped it because they're going to say something to me. There's no feedback loop for me to say, you know what? We don't need to grease this every 7 days. What we need to do is grease it every 10,000 strokes. Okay. MaintainX creates the environment where I can optimize my preventative maintenance program. But even more importantly, this is the big technical problem in digital transformation. If I want to calculate mean time to repair or mean time between failure is how long equipment runs in between breaks, and mean time to repair is how long is it down when it does break. You want mean time to repair to be as short as possible, and you want mean time between failure to be as long as possible. To calculate those numbers accurately, you need to have the rising edge of the event on the machine, the alarm that indicated there's a symptom of some problem. You need that rising edge, and it needs to end with the rising edge of the machine starting to run again, right? And then there's a whole series of events in the middle that we use for these calculations so that we can truly optimize the way that we do break fixes and preventative maintenance. MaintainX is literally the only CMMS I have ever come across where I can start my analysis at the rising edge of the event on the machine. And I can end it with the rising event of the machine starting at the end. Literally the only one. And I said this in a video in February. I've said it over and over. If you want to know why it is I like MaintainX, that's the reason. Why it is other CMMS platforms out there have not figured this out is beyond me. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. I know Nick has got some slides he wants to go through, and then Alex is going to do a demo. We're going to do it, and then I'm going to ask the Prove It questions at the end. But while you're getting going, Wine Chit, we manufacture network rack panels in Myanmar and are planning to implement Industry 4 since we have a brownfield setup with some hard to digitalize machines. what's the best IIoT MES solution? The answer is there isn't enough information in that question to give you the best IIoT MES solution, because what you need is a digital strategy first. Okay, you need a digital strategy. Why you want to be digital? Like that the why is not in there yet. Okay, you need an architecture, and in order to do architecture, you have to understand the business. We have to quantify your business, and then the last thing is we have to define minimum technical requirements. These are the rules in order for our architecture to work. We have to do those first three things there. So where you need to start, wine chit, is you need to start with an evaluation of your business first. You need to start with, where am I? Where do I want to go? How do I get there? You got to start with that. Okay. All right, go ahead, Nick.
All
Sorry,
good.
buddy.
Alex, you ready to roll the slides? There we go. Yep. So yeah, we'll briefly kind of run through these, and mostly to help set the stage for the demo, because what you're going to see in this, like the live demo today, isn't the like everyday experience for our average user, but it's the opportunity that I think is really important to share with your audience here, and I think it'll be most exciting for them as well. So we're going to talk about how we bridge that gap between data and action. This is talking about how we connect those rising events and what happens in between, and why this is the missing link in your UNS strategy. So go ahead and move on, Alex, to the next slide here. And so this is one of those things where you got to understand where you're at in your digital journey. Everyone's at a different pace. I don't see, I'd say that the vast majority of folks, or that I see, probably like 80 to upwards of 95% are still at the basic digital tool stage, if they're at all. So you hear and see a lot of really exciting things, but the reality, the cold reality of where folks are today is extremely immature, which is, yeah.
And for our audience, connected systems, data-driven operations, predictive operations, that's connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, and solve. Predictive operations is find patterns, report, and solve. Connected systems and data-driven operations is connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize. Most people are in the basic digital tools stage, which is pre-digital transformation.
And some of them may be on a more mature version of this for specific processes or lines, but definitely not, across their operation. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is the, most of your audience, I think, will be familiar with this. And my big challenge to this model is that it doesn't have an action layer. If you build this out, and no one's built it out all the way anyways, for some reason, this model's been around for decades, and no one can actually execute it in practice at every layer, 6 layers. But
it's always some version
where they're trying to get there, but there's no action layer. So best case scenario, you've got electronic wallpaper here. There's nothing that actually allows you to not only build an action layer, but then there's no contextualization. This is just in a world where you just think it's all run by machines, but there's this huge other variable that's missing, and that's the human. And every factory I've been to has humans. And so if you don't incorporate them into your strategy here, you're kind of missing you're missing the meat and potatoes of where your opportunities are to become more efficient. So we'll go into the next slide here. And we believe work execution consuming from the UNS is the biggest untapped opportunity in digital transformation. This is the, if you take one thing away from today, like this is the thing that's missing from you being able to deliver value and you being able to realize the full value of these experiments that you're running. So many folks are trying to build business cases to get support from their leadership. If you don't have work execution as the beginning, part of the strategy, you're going to, it's nearly impossible to deliver the value that you're anticipating. So next slide here. So we're going to talk kind of about how you enrich UNS with contextual data from work execution, and then how we convert those insights into action. So a little bit about MaintainX. Our mission, we talked about it briefly, but so I won't go into too deeply, but we want to equip frontline professionals with modern tools that help them streamline their work, maximize the uptime for equipment, and drive operational excellence across physical asset-driven industries. We have over 12,000 customers today, top-rated platform on the market. We're growing like crazy. We just closed the Series D round, $150 million. We've got a lot of momentum at our back, and we're working really hard every day to keep delivering on this.
And you guys are cash flow positive. I mean, you're serious.
Yeah, we're doing well. I mean,
at this point,
we keep pressing on the gas to make sure that we can. I think there's a lot of there's a couple of reasons that we think this is so important that we press on the gas. One of them is that this labor shortage. Like we have a massive aging workforce, and they're all leaving the work. They're leaving the manufacturing environment every day. There's a manufacturer retiring like every minute or so in the United States alone, and
And when you couple that together with the turnover rate for the employee of the future, the average turnover now is 6 months. So when somebody's right out of college, they literally turn over within 6 months. In my generation, Gen X, it was 5 years. So when you couple the retiring with the turnover rate of new people coming into manufacturing, there's a massive crisis in terms of the knowledge.
All that institutional knowledge,
because you're not passing the knowledge on to the new employees.
How do we transfer that? In the binders that are in the file cabinets, those aren't going to work. Those kids aren't going to pick them up and use them. They don't know how to use paper. So and so that's sort of there's a company that everyone would know the name of. Before COVID, 2019, their average tenure on the front line was over 23 years. Today, it's 3.7 years, and they're just getting crushed across the board. They have just people who don't know what they're doing, and they had no system to capture all that knowledge. And they're having to retrain all day long, and it's has very meaningful challenges that they're bringing to their operation. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the part that we're not going to dive into on this demo, but if we were presenting to a customer or prospect, this is probably where we'd spend a lot more time, and it's the mobile experience. So we're really focused on making sure that we're mobile first with everything we do. The goal is that the technician can have all of the information that they need. That frontline worker has everything they need to do the work, so they know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and making that as simple as possible. And in part by being able to, with the idea being that if this is the single pane of glass that they see at the front line, like the future of manufacturing is not 25 apps across a technician's phone that he's got to go back and forth. Right. It's one single pane of glass, one source of truth. And by being extremely interoperable, we're able to build these dynamic configurable workflows that allow folks to get really creative. And, we get surprised every day by the stuff our customers, dream up and build out. And that's part of the fun of building such an extensible platform. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide here. And so why it works is we're simple by default. Everything's super easy, feature flag. We're mobile and API, MQTT, always super open. We need to make sure that we can get information to and from MaintainX so that your other systems work. And we build with our customers. So we're not, just building out of an ivory tower of what we think it should be. We work really closely with our customers every day to figure out what's a workflow or a problem that, drives somebody crazy, that they hate about their job, that doesn't need to be, as insane as it is, whether it's, ordering a part from an OEM manufacturer that takes 42 emails on average, or getting data from their OT systems into the hands of the folks that need it in a timely fashion. And the beauty of this process too is that we create this change management insulation layer, because you don't have to go and tell your frontline team that you're experimenting with some new OT tool or some new AI model or anything else. All they're going to see is another work order on equipment that they're already familiar with and instructions on what to do. And so you can actually test every new project, every new experiment on the merits of the process rather than adoption.
So is the atomic object in MaintainX the asset?
That in a work order kind of is because the work order is what is generated off of, it's connected to the asset.
So the real atomic object is the work order, and then the second level is the asset.
Because for example, like let's say I want to run just safety inspections, that asset might be the building, I guess, or if you're just doing a general daily site walk. So any kind of work that needs to happen is.
And so work order, there's a one-to-many relationship between work order and execution, or is it a one-to-one relationship between work order and work execution?
So one work order would have a set of instructions, a set of parts that are consumed, has a comment history, a trail on that. You can set those to be recurring. We have templates to speed up how those are created. So one work order would be one instance of performing that work. And then we have different ways that we can build those out in a more efficient manner.
It's mostly the latter, but we have some creative ways now that we're building out some new functionality to kind of make it a little bit more intricate for specific types of workflows that require that.
So so it is possible for there to be a many-to-one relationship between work execution and order.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you could be doing an inspection on a piece of on a production line, and you could be, the condition,
because inspection is execution of work, right?
Sure.
An inspection.
Yeah, it is. So
is a work execution.
So if I'm doing like manual measurements, because not everything can be captured with machine data, or I might be enriching your UNS for multiple assets or sub assets because
good.
And that can happen within one work order. So it can be a one to many from that perspective.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of a more fun advanced use case that we'll sort of show a little bit how that works as we get into the demo. Go to the next slide. And so just to sort of give folks this, double down on why this is, what the cost of this is. A lot of these, industrial automation folks don't, when they leave maintenance out of the picture, you don't schedule it efficiently. So they can't do downtime. You don't want them doing preventive maintenance that takes your machines down during a production run. Really basic thing like that. You've got all this contextual tribal knowledge. It's not being published to digital thread. It's not helping enrich the rest of your UNS and all of the data that you're building there. You continually stay reactive because you can't get more proactive if you're not connecting those systems, and you're not able to make data-driven decisions. And so we have this, this brings this heuristic where it's like you have the Jetsons on one side of the factory where it's this cutting edge robotics and machinery, and then it's like the Flintstones, the way we're managing it. And
hey, Josh, will you bring Eric's question up? That's a good one to ask right here. So how do you merge break fix orders with planned orders, capturing parts used, et cetera? I know you're going to cover this in the demo, but this might be a good spot to answer this question. It's a good question.
Yeah, so I can take that. So for both of those scenarios, those are both going to be work orders inside of MaintainX. We have different work types that we can define on a work order. So we have preventative, we have reactive, all the same concepts apply, being able to track time, log parts, add comments, etc. So a break fix work order, technician could create that from their mobile device, from a template or net new, linked back to a piece of equipment, multiple pieces of equipment potentially. It's going to look and feel the same as a PM in that case.
Yeah.
I want to say, before I hand it back to Nick, there's another piece I wanted to drive home here, and the importance of digital CMMS. Here's a practical problem you see in manufacturing all the time. Everybody starts in the MES layer with digital transformation. Everybody calculates OEE. We can have a debate on whether or not OEE is valuable or not. I think it's valuable if it's used correctly. It's not valuable if you're using it wrong. It's invaluable when you're using it correctly. And the correct way to use it is low OEE is either low availability, low quality, low performance. Okay. Part of the reason that you need to have a digital CMMS is because the performance people, that's operations, they love to blame. If they can recategorize something as downtime, they will. And that will be low availability. And availability is the responsibility of maintenance. And if you don't have a digital CMMS system in order to be able to push back on operations recategorizing non-operational time as downtime, if you don't have a digital system to be able to do that, then what you have is operations re-encoding a block of no production and blaming it on something that wasn't to blame. And when you go to make your decisions about what to optimize, you are optimizing the wrong thing. Because I hate to break the news to you. Availability generally is a problem, and it's normally in microstops. Normally that's your biggest issue. It's not the big catastrophic failures, by the way. It's normally the little tiny failures that come from poor preventative maintenance or slow break, right? But the one of the reasons you have to have a digital CMMS is so that you can't allow operations to blame things on availability that are not that weren't caused by low availability. And again, that's a granular problem you run into in digital transformation. When someone says, why do you need digital CMMS? That is one of the whys. It's one of the reasons you have to have this. It's one of the reasons that you have to pick up these rising edges of all these events across the work order, the checking things out of the stock room, the whole deal.
Two of the most common things that maintenance gets blamed for that dramatically influences asset availability is like operator error. Production will never flag it as operator error, right? So if the operator screws it up, it's somehow maintenance's fault that it's down because the guy fucking did it wrong, right? So, but they still get the shit rolls downhill to them, and they're like, well, how on earth could I have possibly prevented that? And that's a training issue, right? And then it's like the other one is like, well, we don't have the part on the shelf. Well, the maintenance guys typically don't carry the budget for parts. So they've probably advocated for that part or asked for it a dozen times. They don't have any data to go in and ask for it, in a professional way, but they need that part. And so they get blamed if that's not available. And next thing you know, you're wasting 24 hours to have it rush ordered from wherever at like 10 grand for the, overnight shipping. So yeah, those are two like just very simple examples of ways that your OEE metrics are probably not accurate if you aren't considering the contextualization of those events that are those downtime events.
And one of the first things I thought the first time I saw MaintainX, because it is mobile first and it's operator first, it's designed like the licensing, when you look at how they price it, right? One of the things that I always frustrated me is companies that disincentivize organizations from putting the product in everyone's hands. You know what I mean? Like, why would you disincentivize putting the product in everyone's hands, right? When I worked in a salt mine, you want to know when one of our biggest delays was? When I was a mechanic or electrician, the speed limit was 15 miles an hour. The mine was 7 miles long, and we had one stock room where all of our parts were kept, and it was right in the middle of the mine. So if you were out at the furthest reaches of the mine, you would have to drive 3.5 miles at 15 miles an hour to go look for your part. Okay, just to find out that hydraulic pump doesn't exist, or we don't have that actuator, or whatever. MaintainX makes it possible for you to check what you have available from your phone without getting in the truck and driving 15 miles an hour, 3.5 miles to the stockroom to go search for it with your eyes. It's one of the things about digital CMS. By the way, we were a Maximo house. So Maximo was our CMMS there, and Granger was our primary supplier. And then we had some other suppliers, but again, I looked at MaintainX and I'm like, man, that I literally could have saved 4 to 6 or 8 hours a week out of a 40-hour week in just acquiring parts using MaintainX.
It's a big deal. I mean,
seriously.
Yeah, we were just at one point, I was in like a 2 million square foot facility where they didn't even have a centralized parts room. So it was, you can imagine the loops they were doing looking for parts, and it's a mess. Also, shout out to Eric.
All right, Alex.
I just realized he was, got to see him at your Prove It earlier this year. He's cool dude.
Eric's one of the good guys. All right, Alex, it's on you, man. Show us all about.
So we'll go like this last slide here and then jump right into the demo. If that works for you, Alex. But basically, This is the challenge. We've been kind of talking about it at high level, but as it relates to like the industrial automation folks, like your OT integration complexities are creating these siloed PLCs and SCADA systems that just block data flow. And if you're not allowing that stuff to flow across all of the silos and teams in your organization, you're handcuffing folks, and you're handcuffing yourselves by not giving them the information they need to do their jobs better. And a lot of these systems, while they're really powerful and interesting, they're way too complicated, and they have steep learning curves for your average frontline worker. It's awesome that you've got some really smart engineers in your ecosystem, Walker, and they can handle all of these really exciting, complex screens, and they want to, and they get excited to learn about it. But the guys that turn a wrench don't have the bandwidth for that, or even the eyesight sometimes.
Or the money. Or the money to pay for the engineering.
Right. And then if you don't have a system that's really smart, you're not getting, you get like this alarm overload and notification fatigue. Like the amount of big companies I go into that they had some really smart machine learning data scientist team that built this model that predicts something, and they didn't know how to get the frontline team to action on it. So they put it like a flashing red light with a little buzzing alarm, so that, hey, if you see that, go take it out. And next thing you know, they scale that out, and the whole place looks like a casino because there's just flashing lights at every line, and no one pays attention to it. So, so this is sort of like the high level of one of the things we're trying to solve. And with that, I want to pass it over to Alex to do the kind of walk through kind of the high level demo, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. So my goal today, I'm going to kind of walk through MaintainX at a high level. As Nick said off the top, it's not going to be kind of our standard demo. We'll kind of glaze through a couple of the core objects. What we really wanted to focus on today is kind of how we connect into machine data. So my plan today, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the different objects, and then we'll actually take a net new instance of MaintainX, show how we can connect into MQTT and start to drive some different actions off of that. So what you're seeing here is the MaintainX web instance. So I'm running this in a web browser here. I've got different work orders that we'll come back to here in a few minutes. You can see the different links between these work orders out to different assets, all the information that are relevant to that piece of equipment, time and cost tracking, etc. From here, I can click through into my assets module and start to access additional details on that asset. Not true.
And this is multi-tenant,
Correct.
right? Like, so when I'm a customer and I get my own instance of MaintainX app running in some cloud. Are you guys AWS, Google, everywhere? Are you basically running
AWS? Yeah. So you'll see this drop down here in the top left. That's what we call our organization in MaintainX. That's your instance. So I'm a member of many different instances of MaintainX. If you have multiple sites, each running their own instance, there are functions that you can use to kind of share information across multiple instances as well.
Perfect.
So I'm now here in an asset, taking just this air compressor here at the top as an example. You'll have all your kind of standard information about this piece of equipment, photos, your day it was purchased, different manuals, etc., subcomponents, parts, as much info as you want to track on an asset. Where I'll maybe focus for today is kind of this top section, what we call our asset control center. So if we want to track the status of that piece of equipment over its life cycle, there are ways we can manually add downtime, kind of augment that status, provide additional context beyond just the signals that the machine's outputting. We can also link this through our automations, which I'll get to in a second, so that we can drive this more automatically, creating those on and offline events, and also using that to trigger work inside of the system. So from here, if I take, for example, this compressor status tag that we're connecting in from, that now snaps me over to our meter module. So this is what we'll walk through today, kind of how we connect these different signals into MaintainX. In this case, this is simulated data. It's moving around quite a bit, but we can see all of these different stops, and we could be using this to drive those different asset statuses. Then ultimately from here, we can create what we call automations inside of MaintainX. So we can take any data point that we're collecting via MQTT from Ignition and use that to create different conditions inside the system based on what the status is equal to, different thresholds that we may reach, and ultimately trigger action inside of the system. So that could be simply updating the asset status, could be creating a work order based on a number of cycles, etc. Got a question there, Walker?
Do you install a gateway in the plant? Or is there a service that runs on an edge PC that gives you access into the operational network? Like, how does architecturally, do you want to explain to folks how do I get my machine data into a cloud instance?
Yeah, awesome question. And we didn't get to this slide here, but just at a high level, so MaintainX is very open. We have a full web API, so lots of different ways we can connect in. A few things we've been working on over the past year to really streamline that is we've built a series of different connectors, namely for Kepware, Ignition, and MQTT. So depending on the device you're connecting to, the system you're connecting into, we'll sit on top of Kepware's IoT Edge. We have a native module that can be installed inside Ignition. And then for MQTT, it's actually a small Docker container we call our on-premise agent that you would install close to your broker that then communicates back to MaintainX over standard HTTPS.
So for most of you care about those three connectors. Those are the connectors that's the stuff that's running in your building, in your OT network to get into the MaintainX.
Yeah, and going back to how we build with customers, these are where this is where we're seeing the most demand today. If we had folks wanting something else too, we'd whip that up and make that as seamless as possible.
Yep. Well, once you have the MQTT connector, I mean, really, there isn't a whole hell of a lot, for IIoT. I mean, that covers 95% of implementations,
Yep.
So, and that if you have an OPC UA client, that's probably the only other one I'd even worry about, if I'm being honest with you. But sorry, Alex, go ahead, man.
And you're spot on. So these are three that we built just to really simplify and streamline that process. There's obviously a bunch of other ways that you can connect data into MaintainX, but what I'll do with the rest of the demo here, I'll actually take a net new instance of MaintainX and we'll set up what that MQTT connector looks like. It should take me about 5 minutes max to get that up and running. So that was my goal for today, just to kind of show what that looks like. So I have another instance of MaintainX, a brand new organization. There's nothing in here. There's no work orders. There's no meters. There's no automations. So where we'll get started is I'm in here as an admin. So I have permissions to basically do everything. I'll go into our integrations panel here in the bottom left. This is where we define different API keys, webhooks that we can use to exchange information out. We also have these connectors that are available for us to set up and configure. So I'm going to walk through the MQTT connector. I'll be running this locally here on my machine, but you'll see there's a link out to our configuration documentation. It'll walk you through everything on how to set this up, the requirements for your broker, etc. But for the sake of today, I'll go ahead, I'll set up a demo instance. This is just the title that I'm giving to this connector. We have the ability to auto create meters. So any tag that it detects, any topic that it picks up, we can automatically create these meters. I think I have about 150 different topics coming in. So I'll put that on here.
Do you want to explain real quick what a meter is in MaintainX terms?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. So in MaintainX, we call a meter basically a tag. Think of it as a one-to-one for that. The reason we don't call it a tag, sometimes these are manually input. So I'll show an example later in a procedure where we're taking a manual reading, maybe thickness of something that's not instrumented, an hour meter that's not digital. So we call a meter, think of it as a time series tag.
And Anil, that will be the answer to your question. The many sites still have assets not connected to any digital platform. What about those? Actually, MaintainX starts from the operator, and machine connectivity was the second thing they did. The first thing they did was do work execution through human beings. So they are human centric. Yep. So the answer to you for non-connected assets, we rely on humans until we migrate.
That's how we can play well with
those
the UNS architecture, because the reality of you having all 100% of your machines networked and tagged set up is, I don't know many companies that are even in to 30%, right, of everything going. Yep. So we've got to be able to capture that, the rest of that for sure.
And what Alex is doing here is generating the token that gives his client permission to talk safely and securely to the application.
MaintainX, exactly.
Yep.
So from here, I kind of pre-filled part of this configuration file. So the main thing that we're missing is the access token. I also have in here basically connection parameters out to my HiveMQ instance. I have the credentials into my client. I have these hidden here. That's basically all we're going to need to start what we call our on-premise agent. So I'll just quickly copy this Docker command, and I'll start this container, and I can check the logs quickly just to make sure it's running. And just while that's getting connected and set up, I'll just flash up quickly the actual connection that we're connecting into. So in this case, it's not much data. It's actually coming from Ignition. We're simulating some data and pushing this out. And it's over SparkPlug-B. So I've got some simulated data here coming from SparkPlug-B. I think there's about 120 so different tags that we're collecting in from the system. So these are going to automatically be brought into MaintainX and created as meters that we can then go and link back to the assets that we have set up in our structure. So from here, it's just going to show us waiting for connection. Probably if I refresh, it should be connected by now. May take another 10 or so seconds to do that. I can just quickly check the logs here. All right, so it's recorded some metrics, so we should be in business. All right, so it just did an update there. But in this case, you'll see it is connected. It's detected 202, what we're calling sensors at this point. I'm not a huge fan of that name, but these have been created as meters as well. So if I leave from this integration page,
metric or topic is what I would call it.
Agreed completely.
Yep.
So I now went into the meters page. These are all going to be those different topics, what we call meters in MaintainX that have been created. I can jump in and see that these are pulling data. I just started this, so it'll continue to capture data from these different meters. And ultimately from here, we can go ahead and create different automations off of that. So as we link those out to assets.
And the automation would be off of, so you can do interval, you can do event, you can do event driven, interval driven, right?
Yep. So, common case for things like run hours, I could say I want this to increase from the last trigger. So, the next trigger will be at 1,000 hours. This is my 1,000-hour PM. When that increases from that trigger, it's going to go. There's different ways we can set that up to combine with calendar as well. So we want to do this every month or 1,000 hours, whichever hits first. Again, that could be an increase, different bounds that you set up in the system. So quite a few different ways we can set those triggers up. And then ultimately the actions we would take on that is going to be either to create a work order. So that could be something that we're creating net new from scratch, or we could have a template predefined that's got a set of instructions. It's assigned out to a certain team. It's got parts that we typically consume on that. So lots of different ways we can kind of speed up that process.
Do you find that, I mean, one of the things, do you find that like end users will use this engine for things you guys it never occurred to you?
Yeah.
Like they'll basically fit a quality inspection into a work order where they're using the, some event trigger. Like, I mean, you wouldn't generally, you'd use a LIMS system or something for that generally, or a QMS system. And, but do you find that people start throwing a lot of their tools inside of MaintainX?
That's part of where like the CMMS Plus starts to become exciting, like what the plus is. And, maybe you don't have a QMES yet, and maybe you're not sophisticated enough to even manage a QMES system, but you can start to do quality like work here until you are ready to maybe get some more of the sophisticated or advanced functionality that offers. And that, we get surprised by the novel ways that our customers are leveraging it.
Because of the way that what Alex is doing right there, a lot of people do that like in Ignition with Python code. So they'll create a tag that's tracking the hour runtime on a machine, right? It'll be reset on some Boolean to 0. And then they'll go, once this value equals 100, I'm going to call a tag event script to a shared Python script. In that Python script, I'm going to establish a connection to the database. I'm going to build a work order. I'm going to insert it into the like a lot of what you just showed right there, which is basically no code there in that case. Right. People are writing, people are doing very complex integrations using Python for something that, you really can just throw together, similar to like building a Zapier automation.
Exactly. And think of the workflow there, like the automation engineer who's maybe got the Python chops and knows how to do this doesn't have the reliability expertise to know what those workflows should do. So now I can I get this initial setup in place, and my reliability guys who don't know how to code a lick, brilliant. They can take over and build all this out. And to imagine them trying to do that in some of these other systems is never going to happen.
Let's go to, hey, will you bring up Eric's question again? How does it operate if the cloud connection is lost for some time period? That's a good question.
Yeah.
So you're connected to a tenant in the cloud. How does it operate if the cloud connection is lost for some time period?
So the mobile app, which we're not showing today, has an offline mode. So any work that's assigned to you, assigned to your teams, would be cached on the device. So basically this, what we call a procedure, these set of instructions, you'd still be able to complete this even if you're out in a remote area of the facility that doesn't have a network connection. And then when you come back into the office, it'll prompt you, hey, looks like you're back online. You click online and it would publish those changes out. So what I'm showing you today in the browser, typically most end users are doing that on their mobile device, and that has full offline capability as well.
Yeah.
And then Hisham Gris, hello, how are the events generated linked to maintenance? It may also be overwhelming to regular maintenance teams to get all the tokens and the data. How can we really take benefits of those data and remove all the noise? So what Alex was showing here was building the automation itself, going from the app, but that's not what the operator, that's not what the mechanic or the operator is working with. If Alex, if you want to show like what they would
the operator
work with, if you trigger that,
they're just seeing another work order on equipment they already used to seeing work orders for.
Right. They're
just looking at something like this. This says high press vibration. In this case, I already had a set of steps to troubleshoot it, procedure that was built in. That may not always exist, but they would get another work order. It's going to be the same as those break fixes they're creating, the same as their preventative work orders. In this case, this one was triggered by an automation. So from here, they can access a troubleshooting procedure that already existed. They can also use our Copilot and also prompt for that. So I could just say, how do I troubleshoot this? So there's often scenarios where some signal was thrown by some system. It created a work order in MaintainX. It's never a scenario we've come across before. We don't have a procedure built out for it. We don't have a work order template. So where we see a lot of power from our MaintainX Copilot, it's developed in-house by us, it's not the Microsoft Copilot, is it'll quickly extract that information from maintenance manuals. And I can also say,
You guys trained it?
Yep.
You trained it
Yeah.
yourself? Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we're getting
so-
that out of manuals. Go ahead, Cox.
yeah, so it's going to reference different manuals. It's going to let me build procedures from that. So it'll automatically build these checklists for me. I don't need to go in and add each of those buttons. We can build in conditional logic, etc. In this case, I'm also prompting it, what was the last thing we did on this asset? I got this high vibration alert. What was the last work order we did? So it'll give me some information. Somebody came, they adjusted the tension because it was slightly loose. There were some different repairs performed. So trying to bring a lot of that information back to the technician's hands so that when they're out on the floor, they're not flipping through maintenance manuals. They're not sifting back through the history of work orders. We try to make that super easy as well, but just simply asking questions through kind of a more user-friendly interface. You can do voice to text on the mobile device as well, so you're not actually out there typing. Trying to bring a lot of that information to really simplify the job of that end user, that technician.
Are you going to support integration with external MCP servers with your agent? Yeah, you are?
Definitely
Okay.
something that
So they'll
the team's
be
investigating a lot.
able to do
No,
integrations
now
with
we've
other.
got that's something
Awesome.
that we're just nerds and curious and playing with. There's no demand from the client side on that really yet. There's maybe like one.
Yeah, but it's
It's
also
gonna come.
early,
So
right?
yeah,
So,
we're super pumped to play with that.
Yeah.
That feature.
Wow.
And so now this is how we're capturing that tribal knowledge of what did Phil, the guy who retired 6 months ago, do on this machine a year ago. And maybe this is one of those machines that just needs a little percussive maintenance. And so, manual be damned. Just go in there and smack it on the side and it'll run for another 3 months without any interruption.
Where does the data live? So right now I've got a tenant in AWS. If I'm the customer, I've got a tenant in AWS. I'm running an agent service in my plant that's giving me connectivity into my tenant. The data, where does the data live? Do I own the data? Like, so if I move away from MaintainX, can I get an export of all my tables and everything? Okay. All right. And can I access my data from external tools? So obviously there is a relational database sitting behind this or NoSQL that looks relational. Can I access that from external connectors as well?
Yeah, so what I just jumped to here is the export data page, basically all the objects in the system, be it those manual meter readings, work orders. I'm just showing you the front end export tool for that, but you can access all the same information via web API. So if you want to pull all open work orders, all meter readings taken in the last day, that's all available through the web API, and we have webhooks as well, so we can notify on some of those changes. So as the status of a work order changes, as the status of an asset changes, a new high priority work order is created, you can create subscriptions to access that as well.
Because, regardless of what we think, some people still think their system of record should be their ERP. So we pipe all the data back there. I know you're not a fan of that approach, but it's the reality of how a lot of corporate America still does it. So we've got to be able to make sure we can.
It should be the system of record for financial data.
Yeah, but for asset,
it should be the system of record.
It's not always the optimal use case, but again, it depends on where they're at.
Robert Hoogerhide, does the Copilot work with older manuals that have to be scanned or have been scanned into PDF format versus being created as a PDF from the start?
It does. So really anything you can put in a PDF, we'll be able to scan on that. So we've seen customers that'll, snap photos of their old maintenance procedures that are on paper and they're just scanning those in. That'll work just the same. If they have standard operating procedures, we'll help digitize those and bring those into more digital checklists. So all the AI functionality we've built into MaintainX.
Do you use
Go ahead.
So are you using supervised? So where you're scanning, say I've got a procedure that was written by hand. I mean, I've seen some that are 50 years old that are like in a ledger book, right? And they were written by hand. Do you do supervised where I scan it and then I'm doing object character recognition and I'm creating a digital document and then a human being is just confirming, yes, the way you interpreted this handwriting is correct? Or is it we scan it and go with it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It'll make a best guess. It'll help you build a procedure. There's always a human in the loop on that. We want customers to
Okay, got
validate.
it.
You may come
Got
and
it.
make some tweaks. It may, have the steps in a different order than you wanted them in. You may want to group them and add conditional logic of, if this happens, then you perform these steps. So when we create those, we always give that verification step so you can go in and modify those. It's not set in stone.
All right. If you guys have any other questions, drop them in here. I have 3 that I want to ask. If you don't mind me starting. Number 1, what is the typical problem you're solving the first time you're working with a client? I know it varies, but when a client calls MaintainX and you guys, you spin up a tenant for the first time and there's some proof of concept, there's some proof of value. What is the most typical use case people are doing first with you guys?
I can take a
12,000.
Take a stab at it, Alex. I'll cover if you need.
So what I hear a lot is they have some existing maintenance tool, whatever that is, whether it's pen and paper, SAP, whatever it may be. They're not getting adoption. They're not tracking. They know the work's getting done. They've got great folks working in maintenance. They have no visibility into what's being done. So getting that end user experience, getting a tool that the operators can and want to use, just so that they can see the work that's being done. I'd say that's a very common starting place, just to get visibility into, are we completing the PMs we said we're completing? Are they getting done on time? Who's doing them? Do we need more headcount, etc.?
Let me say this. This is a very important point. Okay. And this is not even MaintainX specific. This is for everybody out there. You want to know the number 1 mistake you integrators make? The number 1 mistake. You build something that makes the operator's job harder. You build something that makes the mechanic's job harder. You build something that makes the electrician's job harder. I can tell you this. You want to get adoption? Adoption is very easy. If your focus is that we are going to make the operator's job easier, we're going to give them something that incentivizes them to use it because their job gets easier, then you will get adoption. If you build something that is going to make their job harder, they are not going to adopt it. Okay. When I look at this, I think, okay, there's 2 things in there that I think would massively drive adoption. And there's really 3, but the first one is just native connectivity to devices, to infrastructure. That's pretty rare in CMMS. You don't see it very often. And where you do see it, it's always lacking. But the 2 big ones are, I can create the workflow. If I have the right permission, I can create an automation from my own idea. Okay. I am taking it upon myself to monitor this filter running in this wastewater treatment facility. I've got a pressure sensor on it, a differential pressure sensor. I want to generate a work order myself when the differential pressure, when the DPI gets greater than this, and it's more than 20 hours since the last time it was back flushed. I would be able to set up that automation in MaintainX and generate a work order to go back flush the filter. Okay, that's the first one. If I'm the electrician or the mechanic or whatever responsible for that, I am incentivized. I would much rather go do that than after 20 hours with the DPI greater than 8 pounds of pressure, than have somebody call me on the radio in the middle of my lunch while the entire plant is shut down because the wastewater treatment facility isn't running. I am incentivized to use that. Number 2, and the big one, it's the co-pilot piece. If the co-pilot is going to allow me to learn from all the other people who came before me and make me better at my job, I am going to use it. Like, I look at that and I think that's why you get adoption. That's why you have 12,000 customers. It's why you guys have super low churn rate. It's because adoption rates are high. Okay. Number 2, how much does the typical client spend on MaintainX when they first spin up their first app? What is their general spend? You guys do MRR, right? You guys you do ARR, but break it up into months, right? So what is the typical spend for the average manufacturer? And I know it's going to vary, it's going to but if you had to pick a number, Nick, which I know you must know the number, what's the typical spend?
Yeah, it's contingent on the size of the organization. And so part of our beauty of our model is like and this goes back to like the principle behind what we wanted to build the company for, This isn't just another super tool for the big rich enterprises. This is like Microsoft Office. It's affordable for everyone based on your scale and your size. So that's right, everyone can afford Microsoft Office, but does the big enterprises pay the same as the mom and pops? Of course not. So it's based on your team size. So like for an average plant, that might be 20 grand to get going. That gets your frontline team set, your initial core group set up and running. And that helps prove out.
So 20,000
Yeah.
annually.
And that might prove out your initial business
Okay.
case
And then-
to grow it to other sites or, other use cases as well.
So that's a good number. That's
Yeah.
a good number. Yuri's question. So Yuri's with Cartier. So is MaintainX's plan to better support authentication protocols for their API and webhooks? Support only for an API key is not enough for a large organization with security concerns and best practices.
Yeah, it's definitely come up. So I think we're improving across the platform. Security is something we take very seriously. So I don't know the specifics of what the security teams are working on right now, but absolutely something that's in the pipe.
I would say that the key is the most secure method for managing security in an organization. It is also one of the hardest to manage. It's the most secure, but it becomes a problem managing on a long skyline, right? Where are the keys? Who has them?
Yep.
That becomes it's the most secure. It's not that it's insecure. It's that it becomes problematic to manage at an enterprise level.
And that's part of the reason we love,
and without a lot of
like working with like an MQTT client, or we like try to go through Ignition, is that you don't have to manage 1,000 tag APIs inside of MaintainX. Could you? Yes. Like if you've got, we've seen some folks that have got some very interestingly, uncoordinated network systems that they try to do that. It'll support it, but I think, that's a question where it's like a little more information would be helpful, and whatever you've got in mind is probably something we're already working on, or would be a direction we'd investigate.
So if with a large enterprise, is someone like Alex dedicated? Do you have accounts that you are dedicated to, Alex?
So not me specifically, but we have a full customer success team. So for a large enterprise that came in, they would have an account manager, they would have a customer success manager. We have 24/7 support, so you can go in-app, access somebody. It's a real human. It's not an AI chatbot. And get support there. So multiple layers of support in that. And then we also have an implementation team that would be there for that first setup. So they would help get all your assets in, get your connection set up, get your PM plans in place, digitize some of those procedures for you, kind of give you that kickstart so you're not starting with a blank slate inside of MaintainX.
Yeah.
And that's in addition to the typical 20,000 spend you're paying for. No, it's included in your service.
Yeah, that customer success. Yeah, because like nobody's got a team sitting around waiting.
That's a good project. By the way, that's an important distinction. Because everyone's going to assume that's going to cost.
I mean, it does. It's just part of your subscription. So it's not that we found slave labor to do this work. We pay them, and it's factored into the pricing model.
Well, not only that, you're literally in Silicon Valley, which means it's definitely not slave labor.
We've got
I've got I know we're over, but I want to make sure we get through. You guys don't have a hard stop, I hope, because otherwise we're 9 minutes past your hard stop. But okay. Vaughn, can your co-pilot take older SOPs or maintenance procedures and review and then make suggestions for optimization to those procedures?
So that's something the team's definitely working on, to be able to make more recommendations on PM changes. So if you're over PMing something based on history of work that's been performed, hey, you should be doing this less frequency, or we continue to see an issue on this piece of equipment or this step in the procedure, maybe we want to bulk that out more. So it's not something that we have in there today, but that's definitely a huge area of investment for us to build out that AI functionality, really to take it to that next level and keep building off that to process past work, process manuals, and even make recommendations. Hey, we found in the OEM manual there's this quarterly maintenance that you don't have set up in your system. Would you like to set that up and kind of streamline that flow?
Yeah, our bigger vision for Copilot, I'll just briefly tell you, is like, this is right now we're starting with technicians. We're going to try to enable everyone across that operation to be able to just get the information that they need. Like, there's so many people who are promoted up the chain that don't have all of the business speak, don't necessarily know all the right questions to ask. Our goal is for Copilot to help kind of be that data analyst in their pocket that helps surface these insights, whether it's around labor utilization or it's around processes. I think there's a ton of opportunity for us to enable the workforce across more than just the technician level. So that's something we're building.
Here's a good question for you, Alex. In a site with multiple assets, because this is going to come down to how you guys organize assets. So in a site with multiple assets, if one asset has a recorded maintenance history and another asset develops a similar issue, will the AI suggest a possible solution based on its knowledge base?
So the challenge with that is, are those the same asset? I know customers often, I've seen this time and time again,
Types
are like.
So let's assume they're the same type. They come from the same class.
They're
of
both
asset.
motors, but they're different size motors.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's something we're working through right now of how do we ensure that those are the same, that what we performed on that 100 horsepower motor is relevant for this 2 horsepower motor over here. So definitely an area we're focusing on right now. I think a big challenge that we faced is not everybody's logging all of that information of manufacturer, model, serial number, capacity, all the relevant information that we would need to appropriately link and make that link between those two assets, that those are the same, and this recommendation or this past maintenance that you performed is relevant to this other piece of equipment. So something we're being very cautious on, as we are with all of our AI functionality. We don't want to misrecommend maintenance work. This is serious business. If we tell you to go and perform some task that's straightforward on one motor but is way more complex on another, we're being very cautious with that to make sure that a human is in the loop and that we're not recommending tasks that don't make sense or could be unsafe.
Yeah, and I would make the argument, that's good. I would make the argument here that when it comes to AI, for all of you who are using large language models, think about when you're trying to do, like, you're trying to use an agent for some complex objective, and you say you have the agent building you a dashboard from a lot of data, okay, and just one element on that dashboard is wrong, you don't trust anything else on that dashboard.
Or work you do trust it,
you
you just go and
second
do it, and
And even worse, and now you're making decisions based on the wrong data.
So we're not making
It's very important that the
stuff like that with this AI. This is mission critical stuff. So yeah, we want to be a few steps behind cutting edge at all times, just so that we know we can trust it.
So last two questions. So number one, we'll start with the bad first, and then then we'll end on the good. So this goes to like transparency. Obviously, I think we get the idea of what you're really good at, right? What is it you're like, man, we're not good at that. That isn't something you'd want to be using MaintainX for. You'd want MaintainX to do this part. Give me an example of something people are trying to use MaintainX for that they shouldn't. That you would steer them away and go, hey, yeah, that's not our strength. That's not our bread and butter. You guys have a large enough sample set now where people have attempted to do things where MaintainX wasn't the place to be doing that.
Yeah.
Can you give us an
high
example
volume
or
one
two
that
of
comes
that?
in is like some SMBs, that especially like contractors and service organizations, they have physical assets they've got to maintain, and so this is a great platform for them on that regard. But they kind of have this, they have more software. They get software fatigue really quickly because they just have less headcount, so they want it to do everything. So like example, like we have folks that do tree trimming services, and they really want us to invoice through MaintainX, and they really want us to be able to, manage customer records and do CRM stuff. So like that kind of stuff, we're flattered that they trust us with those, those parts of their business, but it's just not designed for that. And it's not an area where we think there's a lot of advantages to build.
So ERP function.
Yeah. So like anything,
you're not
to capture in there. Like some accounting stuff we will do that is going to be like more around on the EAM side of things, on asset depreciation and modeling. That's part of where we're going. But as far as that day-to-day, like invoicing and billing,
general ledger, there's no general ledger.
Yeah. And that's something that a lot of platforms do really well. Like we can connect to those, and we can kind of allow that. We have like some of those folks do have a connector with QuickBooks, and they push MaintainX data back and forth with those. So that's one area that I think kind of immediately comes to mind. Yeah. I don't know if you've got any, Alex, that you've seen that you're like,
No,
no,
that was pretty similar to what I was going to say. I think there's a lot of those where we can get close, but integrating in with a QuickBooks. Like I've had a customer ask, hey, can I bill? Can I like take a credit card through MaintainX? We'll integrate to QuickBooks, let you generate the invoice over there. I think they're way better suited to do that than for us to be collecting payment.
Not only that, they've spent all the money on the licenses for the payment processing. They already have all of those merchant relationships set up. I get that one a lot. Hey, I want to be able to check my bank accounts. I literally want I want cash on hand in my. I'm like, wait a minute. Do you understand
exactly
like how much you have to pay for those financial APIs to be able to access banking data from any bank? Like that's very expensive.
Yeah,
that's
the value of that is. So it's not an area. Yeah. I think that another one, if you want something that's a little more meaty, maybe is like there's a lot of MES functionality that they kind of expect us to do, and it's like Tulip does that really well. Like Machine Metrics, like all these other MES systems, are kind of been working on that for a long time. Right. Why we'd rather play really well with those tools instead of build more functionality there. So
what's the thing, Nick, that like if you were or Alex and you wanted to show off MaintainX, you're like, I'm gonna in one example, like the thing that we do the absolute best, and you're gonna show off MaintainX, what is the use case you would show?
I just go to a mobile app, walk through a technician's experience, being able to easily know what to do, show them in that work, how easy it is for them to get into that work order, push Copilot, ask it two very unsophisticated questions, the sort of thing that a new hire might ask, and watch them sort of see that answer unfold. And at that point, I can turn them around and give them the device or whatever, and have them go do the same demo themselves after just watching it once. And I think that sort of speaks to the power of how easy it is to adopt, how easy it is for anybody to just pick up and run with. And that is just not the case for 99% of tools in this ecosystem. It's long learning curves before you're able to do something productive. So that's sort of the initial aha wow moment for most folks. And I can, riff off of that if they have more questions into how that work order was built out or generated, and give them some more complexity beyond that. But that initial, that's the piece that I still is the showstopper for most folks.
Yeah, I think even just creating a work order
people want it
with a set of instructions kind of blows me away that's seen as such a daunting task. So I'll get that sometime in customer demos. Okay, can you show me how to create a work order? Yeah, it'll take not long at all. Once we create it with a title, we can use the different tools that exist to go and build a procedure all from the mobile device, and you have a fully functioning work order with parts allocated, time tracked on it, just a matter of minutes. And they built simple things, being able to tag my colleague and have him get a push notification that I need his assistance on a work order. It's pretty basic, but many systems don't have that. So,
yeah.
Well, let me say this. Here's the advantage MaintainX had in the market. Okay, here's the real advantage. It's actually something people pick on you for. Okay, you're like, oh, these is a bunch of fucking Silicon Valley guys, and and they're trying to sell industrial software, and I'm thinking, it's only Silicon Valley guys who would have gone mobile first and said, this is ridiculous that you would start with a desktop application and this big massive, why don't we just go multi-tenant with mobile? That it requires the Silicon Valley mindset of thinking. The fact that you guys went operator centric, you went the human being centric, because your point of reference is this single pane of glass, there's never a training program for using an application in iOS or Android. You don't take a week-long training program to do that. That's number two. And number three, and this is probably the big differentiator for you technical nerds out there, why it's the fact that both an asset and a work order are atomic objects. And that's the reason that work orders are easy in MaintainX. So the reason they're difficult everywhere else is because a work order is not treated as an atomic object at Maximo. It's treated as a function. And so a function has very specific parameters that you have to pass into it in order for the work order to be generated. And there has to be foreign keys tied to the primary key in some other table in order for you to be able to generate a work order. So there's a lot of ways to screw up generating a work order in every other platform because it's not an atomic object. And the difference here is that there is a root class that's a work order that is extensible inside of MaintainX's platform that you have control over. And each of it is and what you control over is each individual step, the things that make up that work order, whether it's a series of instructions or a couple of checkboxes or whatever the hell it is. It required the Silicon Valley mindset for you guys, for this to be built. It's why there is no other CMMS out there. That's why MaintainX was the only CMMS to prove it, because you were the only guys who met the minimum technical requirements. And it required that mindset. So with that, if people want to get a hold of you, is it contact at MaintainX.com?
Shoot me an email, nick@getmaintainx.com is fine. Find me on LinkedIn. Find Alex if you want an even smarter answer on LinkedIn. And no, we've got a great team that's ready to help us, help answer any questions.
And what's the next show? Where's the next show that people wanted to see MaintainX in action? They wanted to go to a conference and see it. What's the next show?
We'll be at FabTech in Chicago coming up. And then we'll be at Ignition Conference. Okay. I know probably a fair amount of your audience will be out there. So definitely check us out.
These guys will be doing Prove It at ICC this year. So if you guys want to come to ICC, they'll be at FabTech if you want to see them live. All right. With that, Nick, Alex, thank you guys for joining us. This actually was really, I actually truly enjoyed this. This was awesome. Actually, I'm not going to lie. I appreciate it, guys. All right. Thank you, guys.